Hi guys, this is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, especially that. And if you get anything from my work, a connect, an epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description of this video. If you're so inclined, check out my portfolio at Alley Cat Creations211. You'll see a lot of artwork, pyramids, different types of pyramids, business card holders, candles. I do custom drawings in pencil. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, I know that the people that I send drawings to that commission me to do stuff have nothing but great things to say. So check me out there. I also have channel membership. It's just one tier right now. It's 3D. And the perks about being on my channel is that you get a free entry into the raffle that was going to happen this Friday, January 3rd. There's a lot of gems packed into this. It's $100 value. The entries are $5, and you can go to my community tab to check out that raffle. Anybody can do the raffle. Members just get a free entry, and we'll pick and draw the winner. I had found some fun apps to pick a number. So check that out. I am probably going to have a paint and sip video out either tomorrow or Thursday. Wait, today is Monday. Wednesday. Um, being that it's New Year's Eve. I don't know what my plans are yet, so hang tight. I'm going to try to get a lot in so that I have for when I go back to work, unless it snows and then I'm stuck. Fun times. Fun times. The voice of ISIS. Chapter 7. Narcotics, Alcohol, and Psychism. The human body is the temple of the living God. Within it are certain vital centers comparable to doors, which open into inner shrines. Using these centers as points of contact, the life forces from the higher planes flow into the physical body through them as electrical current flows through a wire. And it is through these centers that the Christ force must flow to reach and spiritualize man's various bodies before their redemption or resurrection can take place. By resurrection, we mean the ultimate building up of a spiritual body within the physical by a process of gradually raising the vibrations of its particles to respond to the key note sounded by the divine or higher self. These centers or doors are normally protected by nature with oily coverings or sheaths composed of both astral and physical matter, which permit the flow of normal life forces and protect them from all others. These doors should be opened only by gradual purification and development of the protecting sheaths. Normally, this takes place as a natural growth resulting from a life of mental and bodily purity, an intense spiritual aspiration. It should not be a forced or hothouse growth, for each door must be open and closed under the absolute control of the will. Each individual has been given these doors to guard and is held responsible for their keeping. Only as he can master them and in full knowledge open them to the knock of the Christ and close them to his enemies can he hope to conquer. It is only after long training and great spiritual growth that the entities of the astral world can be mastered and held at bay when the doors are open. In fact, the first and most important work of the advanced disciple is to stand faithful watch over these doors. Keep thou the door of thine heart. Well, I am one of those people because I guard a Stargate. Whew. The Holy Ghost is the mother principle of the power of bringing forth. Hence, the destruction of the sheaths prevents the bringing forth or manifesting of the Christ force within you. The sin against the Holy Ghost, the unpardonable sin, unpardonable only because irreparable, is a separation of the personality from the guidance of the higher self through the destruction of the means of contact. This takes place through the breaking down of the doors or the destruction of the oily sheaths that protect the centers leading from physical into the astral and psychic bodies. Once these sheaths are destroyed, the person is no longer able to close the doors and so becomes an easy prey to denizens of the astral. Such a one becomes a helpless victim to any and all sorts of psychic imposition and deception. Dum dum dum. There is no such thing as a lost soul, but it is possible for the personality to persistently refuse the guidance of the higher self and ultimately break away from its entirety and become a lost human animal. The animal life force of such a soulless entity may incarnate several times, each time growing more degenerate until it has finally exhausted the force obtained during the contact with the soul, and the aggregated atoms disintegrate and return to the elements from which they were gathered. The soul in such cases is not lost, but is indrawn to await a new opportunity to gather up the materials necessary to clothe itself in a personality. There are several abnormal ways in which the oily protecting sheaths can be broken down and the doors thrown open, chief among them which are the use of alcohol and narcotic drugs. Chemically speaking, ordinarily, alcohol is ethyl hydroxide. The ethyl, the spirit, vibrates to the highest rates reached by mere physical matter, the point where matter transcends the physical and enters the astral, and ethyl actually functioning on both planes. Narcotic drugs also contain ethyl element. The ethyl, when taken into the body, immediately seeks to escape into the astral and naturally flows the usual avenues of communication between the two planes. But in escaping, it passes through the centers in a reverse direction to the normal current and gradually burns off the insulating sheaths until in time they are utterly destroyed, just as an electrical insulation might be burned off by interference with the normal flow of the current. This breakdown may be very rapid, as in the case of a habitual drunkard or drug fiend, or it may be insidious and not show markedly for several incarnations, but the result is certain, and every indulgence in the substance mentioned is a step toward the end. Ultimately, this leaves the doors unguarded and open for all horrors of the lowest astral plane to rush in and take possession of the temple of the living God, thus desecrated. Bullier Leuchten gives a realistic description of some of these horrors in his occult novel, Zanani. In that story, the student opened the doors abnormally by the use of drugs and being unable to close them through fright at the sights that met his gaze, was haunted until his death. Tobacco, although classed as a narcotic, does not contain the elements so destructive to the psychic centers. In fact, when not used to excess, is rather soothing. It does, however, injuriously affect the heart and nervous system. From an occult standpoint, one of the greatest objections to its use is its tendency to form a habit. It goes without saying that an aspirant for the spiritual life must be master of all conditions and functions and a slave to none. Hence, while tobacco is not rigidly prohibited in earlier stages of growth, its use is strongly advised against. Tea and coffee are stimulants, but not narcotics, in the sense we use the term, as they do not contain the injurious elements. Their excessive use does affect the nervous system injuriously, although many sensitive persons find that their moderate use has a beneficial and tonic effect, but their use should not be abused. The drunkard and the drug have opened the doors while in a state of debauchery, and in such a condition, being particularly unable to defend themselves, they practically invite all the fiends of the underworld to enter and take possession. It is our duty to give out our sympathy and help to this class of sorely afflicted ones, for since it took many lives to break down the protective sheaths, it will require a long, hard fight to rebuild them. Hence, do not let such unfortunate ones become discouraged. No matter how many times they may fall back into the old habits, every effort to conquer aids in the rebuilding, and the very fierceness of the struggle will ultimately strengthen the soul. But no matter how sincerely they repent, or what spiritual advance they make as a result of the suffering they undergo, when the aura is tainted with narcotics or filled with fumes of alcohol, and until the protective sheets of these centers are rebuilt, it is utterly impossible for a master or messenger from the Great White Lodge to contact or come anywhere near such an one, no matter how great the student's psychic or spiritual development. On the contrary, they will have a bitter fight to keep out of their auras entities from the astral plane, and it will require many incarnations of such fighting ere the sheaths can be rebuilt. These sheaths are not broken down in one incarnation, but since in each incarnation there is a tendency to repeat the same old mistakes until they are conquered, so in each incarnation here is a tendency to increase the weakness brought over from the past until the final breakdown comes. The rebuilding must necessarily follow the same law, but brought about by gradual accomplishment through determined and persistent constructive effort. We read in the Bible that no drunkard can inherit the kingdom of heaven. In this sense, the kingdom of heaven means the highest spiritual plane, which can be reached only by the perfect control of the doors or centers through which alone communion is possible. The Bible does not say that no drunkard can be saved, but that he cannot reach into the higher spiritual realms and come into conscious touch with his Father in heaven until he has conquered. He has destroyed the means of communication, and it is only after earnest and persistent effort through many lives that such a one can gradually rebuild the sheaths, purify the centers, and again make the body a fit temple for the coming of the Christ. Many drunkards desire to stop drinking, but being open to the astral plane, they are unable to resist the urge of those disembodied ones who have passed out of physical life while addicted to drink and have no means of gratifying their desires in the astral world. In order to gratify them, they must come into touch with the physical plane by entering into or obsessing someone on the physical plane, or they can again experience the effects of the drug. On the other hand, there are drinkers who simply say, I am done with drink, never touch it thereafter. In such cases, they are unconsciously rebuilding the centers until finally a point is reached where the doors can be closed at will, and it only requires some strong emotion to put the will into effect. This will is often aroused in a dramatic manner at the sudden conversations, which so frequently result from various forms of religious excitement. It is only a normal, purified, strong, and healthy body with every function at its highest degree of development in every center under perfect control that the Christ can fully manifest on earth. You can live the Christ life and obtain to a high degree of spirituality and make many advanced steps without meeting all these requirements, but you cannot reach mastery without fulfilling all the law. One of the most noticeable karmic results of the use of narcotics and alcohol in past incarnations can be seen in the numerous non-spiritual subjective mediums of the irresponsible type who are to be found on every hand. Their doors destroyed in past lives now stand wide open, leaving them at the mercy of any and every entity who desires to gratify its animal senses upon the physical plane. Surely their lot is a possible one, the more so because they know not the terrible dangers they run. Another karmic result of an action of alcohol and drugs is to be found in a certain class of congenital imbeciles whose psychic centers cannot even connect with the ordinary centers of the physical body. In fact, many of them are the reincarnations of the soulless entities mentioned above. They have almost no voluntary control of any but the lowest animal functions and must finish out their incarnation in a sort of vegetative animal existence. Pause. That just brings me to think the background people, and not to say that they're soulless, but if they're functioning in that way, it's usually the background people who are trying to obtain more of that layering. And I want to say that, once again, this was written a very long time ago where it like just a whole different paradigm, a whole different paradigm. And I'm here. Hi. I've done a lot of that stuff that they're talking about and was prescribed its narcotic substances because of my arthritis. That doesn't lower or lessen my abilities and or opening the portals to negative things. I do a lot of work in clearing and purifying. So just put this in perspective. I would not hold a lot of these things as absolute. As much as I love the Curtises, and they talk about this subject in a lot of their other books, just keep that in mind that like no one should be judging anybody. Everybody has their personal journey. And yes, unbeknownst to a lot of people, they are carrying around lower astral beings around in their fields. That's, but most of us know and can see some of that stuff can help them get it off. But a person has the need for healing, as if they're really addicted to the point where their whole lives are shattered, and then I would say, okay, this applies. But for most people, having a drink every weekend or going out and getting the occasional glass of wine isn't going to put you in this category. And if you're on a prescribed substance because of pain and because of whatever have you, you're taking it for where your body needs to have it. Like I was on pills for a very long time and I stopped cold turkey. Just don't do it anymore unless I'm in extreme pain, which I haven't had in a long time. So just be mindful. We all have our vices. I love my caffeine and my little smoke, but once again, we're human. Human. Still another way in which the doors are frequently broken open is by placing yourself in a passive, non-resisting state and making the demand for psychic experiences, or sitting for development, as it is called. In this practice, you are placing yourself in a negative state in which any entity dwelling on the lower astral plane can help you break open the door. This either destroys the doors or abnormally forces the development. Sorry, guys. The development of the psychic centers instead of unfolding them as a natural accompaniment of spiritual growth. When results have been this obtained, since the doors are not under the control of your will, they are open to any entity who desires to obsess you. Even if the obsessing entity is a disembodied friend of good moral character, your condition is not altered, for he must be he near you constantly to protect you from the fiends. This is what takes place in ordinary subjective mediumship. As we said in Letters from the Teacher, the difference between spiritual communication and subjective mediumship is a difference both of vibration and method. The right way to contact the higher planes is to raise the vibrations of your physical and psychic bodies and their centers until they vibrate in harmony with the keynote of the soul plane, at which pitch no evil thing can come nigh thy dwelling. As we can only become aware of a thing when some part of our organism responds to its vibrations, the psychic must have the proper development to come into harmony with the spiritual plane, or he can contact the masters or respond to things which touch upon or vibrate within the octave of the keynote. This is why I say what I do all the time. On the one hand, spiritual communication, the psychic through spiritual living, loving thoughts and helpful actions in many lives must build into his or her character enough of the divine principle of compassion for all humanity to raise the vibrations of all the bodies, either temporarily or continuously, to the note of spiritual love, to which the masters of compassion naturally vibrate. On the other hand, subjective mediumship, the psychic, through various means, either mentally by stilling the thoughts or physically by various yogi practices, such as gazing at a crystal or black spot or sitting in a constrained position through breathing exercises, and many other still more objectionable practices, have gained the power of stifling the physical vibrations and becoming negative, or when through the oily sheaths having become weakened or destroyed, the psychic is naturally negative. In such a state, the physical atoms, not being held together by the vibratory rhythm to which they naturally respond, slow down and fly off to such an extent that any disincarnate entity clothed in atoms of and vibrating to the note of the astral plane, which is next to and in its lower degrees overlaps the earth plane, can gather up and clothe himself in sufficient of the physical atoms, thus throw off the temporary vibrate to the keynote of the physical plane and become temporarily recognizable on that plane. In the first instance, the whole desire of the psychic is to uplift humanity. He is filled with compassion for the race and desires to give himself as a willing sacrifice to bring enlightenment to the world. This is true spiritual development. The teachers and masters whom he contacts do not see the little individual difficulties, or if they do, they understand the law and know that all is working out for the best. The only wisdom can really help. Given wisdom, love, and sustaining help, the disciples can and indeed must work out their own personal problems, as Paul says. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. The Pauline purpose of the Bible. Work out. I'm not even going to repeat that because that's just wrong. All spiritual communication is uplifting, and the spiritual atoms which the psychic has contacted and drawn into his body will rejuvenate and strengthen the physical, uplifted, the mental, and advance him on the path of spiritual attainment. In the second instance, by giving up the command over the life forces and throwing open or breaking down the doors of the sacred centers, the vitality is drawn upon and the atoms thrown off are used to bring to the physical plane the denizens of the astral. These may be pure or vile, and are attracted to the medium in exact ratio to the state of the atoms which he or she gives off during the negative sitting. If you understand this, and the fact that most of the entities contacted upon the astral plane are not spiritual beings, but merely men and women with their most dense and outer garment, the physical body, removed, you will understand the danger of giving yourself up to their use. Since they are using astral senses, they can see further ahead than those of the earth plane. but such advice as they have to give should be taken just as you would take the advice of any earthly friend, subject to your own good judgment and common sense. Usually such entities are interested in the daily life of the sitters rather than their true spiritual advance. But if evilly disposed or lacking wisdom and knowledge of the law, they can and often do deceive. They can only come to earth as they left, clothed in physical atoms. The fact that to manifest on the physical plane, they must steal physical atoms from the medium and sitters, and proof positive of this. Often their desire is to help alleviate earthly conditions, but their advice, while valuable in many cases, is still in accord with worldly standards. In fact, their activity is much like that of well-meaning but over meddlesome friend on the earth plane. The desire to help their friends out of difficulties, over hard places, and often give advice which helps to make money out of the credulity of their fellow man. This, as you can see, but helps to sink the race deeper into the mire of earthly affairs. The first is a constructive, the second a destructive method of communication. In no case unless they are masters, in which case they will manifest quite differently, as we will explain later, as they different from people on earth, except that they are functioning in a body composed of finer matter. You cannot always tell which of the above-mentioned methods have been used by the teaching received, for even in the subjective mediumship, the teaching may be off a higher moral character, just as some friend might have given you a highly moral address. But no matter who the entity claims to be, he will not be a master of wisdom if the subjective method is used, for no master of the right-hand path ever uses that method. In this case, it is not a question of what teachings are given, but how they are given. One absolute test as to which method a psychic is using and from whence the messages come is the effect on the physical body. In spiritual communication, the psychic is clothed upon by spiritual atoms, which self-effacement and compassion have drawn to him, and he has grown more spiritual. If after the experience his vitality is augmented and peaceful, happy, and vigorous feeling remains, even for days afterward, if life seems fuller, trials easier to bear, and love more abundant, you can rest assured that he has been risen above earthly things and has been clothed upon the spirit and has brought back lessons for the benefit of humanity. This is the form of communication with the higher planes that should be desired, but do not strive for it. Let it come as a natural growth resulting from a life filled with loving, unselfish thoughts and deeds. No wonder why I can channel what I do. And many of you are the same. And that's probably why I don't read spirit or have that ability developed that well. I'm probably being protected. In subjective mediumship, however, owing to the loss of physical atoms and vitality, the psychic is depleted and weakened and soon shows it, not only in bodily health, but also in mental power. His nervous system is inverted, his mentality is dulled, and a great stumbling block has been placed in his path. If after communicating the psychic is exhausted, tired, nervous, cross, fretful, and uneasy, even for days, you can rest assured that he has allowed some astral entity to absorb his vitality and contact him by the second and destructive method. It must be remembered, however, that even the psychic who uses the constructive or correct method of communication is far more highly sensitive than the average and hence is easily affected by any lack of harmony in surrounding conditions, either physical or mental, and often suffers from such conditions, although later is able to conquer or rise above them. This is one reason why in all ancient religions, the Sibyl or inspired priestess was always surrounded by love, beauty, and harmony, and sacred protection against all forms of inharmony. We are now nearing the end of the fifth race of the fourth round, having just entered into the sixth sub-race, and are reaching a point where, if we have been diligent, we should begin to lift up our eyes and see the Father afar off and say, I will arise and go to my Father. Many are beginning to unfold their inner faculties and realize the presence, or perhaps hear the voice of their divine guide and teacher, and receive messages and teachings from him. While the teachings of the masters are always true, for there can be no confusion, since they are all one and give out identical teachings. Yet psychics who have never studied the philosophy of evolution or rebirth, or the laws of communication with such beings, cannot always grasp, hence cannot correctly interpret the lessons given, and much confusion results owing to the intellectual limitations of the instrument they must use, the physical brain. The physical brain cannot grasp or respond to ideas which the pictures, or at least some conception, the seed, so to speak, has not been acquired through the outer sense organs. Through study, observation, at this point, there are many, many avenues of deception, hence the great necessity for the pupil to come under proper instruction, and above all, to learn that strict obedience to the laws, which ages of occult training have proved to be the only safeguards, is a necessity, which laws he cannot find out for himself in one's carnation, nor can he find them out through the guidance of astral teachers, for no matter how well-intentioned such teachers may be, they are still limited to the stage of their own evolution. Hence, only those who have passed through all stages of evolution, have mastered the law, can give such training. Such great teachers do not impart this training through astral means, for they have left well authenticated records and textbooks of their philosophy. Hence, like any other scientific study, only when the student was familiarized himself with the fundamentals of the science will the advanced teacher attempt to communicate with him. For those great teachers know only too well the temptations and deceptions of the astral plane, and their great desire is to protect humanity from their dangers rather to lead into them. Much better for a teacher to throw a pupil into the water, he had been told how to swim. Just as a college contains the accumulated wisdom and experience of all who have made discoveries in any line of study, while an individual experimenting alone has only his own experience to guide him and must make many blundering mistakes which a college training would have prevented, so is in occultism. The Bible is full of references to these psychic centers. Whenever doors or gates are mentioned in the scriptures, the reference is to these sacred centers. The following are only a few of the references. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. The children of Israel were told to take the blood of the sacrificial lamb, symbolizing the Christ's force sacrificed in humanity, and strike the litten and the two side posts with blood that is in the basin. And now, none of you shall go out of the door of this house until the morning, as a sign that the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. Interesting. The whole story of Job is but a history of an initiation. Job laments as his chief sin that he opened his door to the traveler. And again he asks, have the gates of death been open unto thee? Or hast thou seen the doors of the shadow of death? Both of these statements are incomprehensible from any literal point of view, but are plain in the light of the above. Wisdom is spoken of as she crieth at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. In Isaiah, we have the invitation, come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers and shut thy doors about thee. This is a condition necessary to entering into communion with the spiritual plane, for the doors must be shut to the lower, or they can be opened to the higher. In the New Testament, we have these directions as to prayer, spiritual communion. But thou, when thy prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, shut out all worldly and astral conditions, pray to thy Father, which is in secret, and the Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. A most significant allusion to the necessity for mastery over the doors is given in St. Luke. Strive to enter in at the strait gate, for many, I say unto you, will seek to enter in and shall not be able. When once the master of the house is risen up and hath shut to the door, but he shall say, I tell you, I know not whence ye are. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity. To whom can this dismissal apply but to those without the gates? This plainly alludes to the state of development in which we have gained such mastery over the doors that we can shut them to all undesirable influences, even though they have supped with us, and say, depart all ye workers of iniquity, and make them depart, for you must be the master of your house. Again, in St. John 10, 1-3, we read, verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out. I can't. Note carefully the promise given to the angel of the church of Philadelphia in Revelation 3. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. This promise is now being literally fulfilled, as these are the last days of the cycle, and this movement is the open door referred to. The cry of the Christ rings in the ears of every student who reads this lesson. Behold, I, the Christ force, stand at the door, the heart center, and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in unto him and will sup with him, and he with me. Just as the sorry guys, I know that's annoying. Just as there is danger in opening the doors of the individual, so it is with all spiritual movements. Every movement really sent out by the Great White Lodge is a vital center or door in the great body of humanity. And as such doors are open, it becomes the duty of every student who enters therein to sacredly guard his door and see to it that only the Christ force shall enter. Else, just as with individual doors, evil psychic forces will pour in. The door which this movement symbolizes is a door for all humanity. It is the door of the open heart center through which the love force is poured out to all the centers. If a movement be established through mere psychism, emotionalism, or the desire of some personality to shine as a teacher, then the evil forces of the lower astral planes are poured out upon its followers instead of the Christ force, even if some of the teachings given out are seemingly helpful. It will be noticed, however, in such movements that the spirit of loving fellowship is absent. In its place is a tendency for the leaders to demand personal aggrandizement. Therefore, all students of the higher life, when confronted with a spiritual movement, should seek in the silence the guidance not of any mortal, but of their own higher self in regard to it. I see this all the time. The question is not merely whether they find in the movement certain things which they can accept while rejecting others, but that they must determine what forces is being poured out through the door movement. For every person belonging to a spiritual movement, as well as its leaders, is absolutely responsible for the force that enters the body of humanity through them, as well as for the force they bring into the movement. If any movement is brought to your attention and it be a true spiritual movement, it is the open door for you and comes to you in response to your prayer for more light and help. If it be not a true spiritual movement, then it comes to you as a test of your ability to use your intuition and judgment. Boom, boom, boom. Therefore, do not accept the teachings of this or any other spiritual or occult movement until through prayerful consideration and meditation, you receive the confirmation of your own divine guidance that it is the open door for you and your next step. I talk about this all the time, and I have a book to validate it. Go within, go within, go within. Go within. For reals though, this is the most true statement ever, and I can only impart the same knowledge and words to you guys because holy crap, there's a lot of people out there spewing a lot of spiritual falsehoods and false light and giving you fear, doom, and gloom. And even in the whimsy light stuff, unless you go within and know it for yourself to be true, that's why I, you see, throat chakra, I have to wear my kunzite, my kranite. For reals though, I say this all the time. If you're not going within and aligning with the work that's being presented at you, whether it be from a political movement, a spiritual movement, a book, and you don't sit with it and analyze it and see if it aligns with you, this is why I make a lot of cautionary claims for when people read other people's work, like I'm reading their work, like I go into alignment, like you're seeing my reactions firsthand. And they're not saying much of anything that I haven't already said. And that's to everything behind me and on my computer. There are people out there that just read something, absorb a little bit of the information, but make it like that is the end all be all of all things when it's just a perception. There's no one correct way of doing something. This is from a Christian mystic viewpoint. I tend to probably channel the higher hermetic guides and spiritual beings from old past paradigms concurrently happening right now, but I'm not alone. I don't make anything absolute. I want you to do this and go within and feel it. And if you don't feel it, it's not for you. I take no offense to any of that. Everybody's from a different, most people are from different paradigms and different rays of source. Some have a religious doctrination and others don't. I'm gonna get that out of me, I promise. Next time we're gonna a study of karma, but this last statement, I have during a certain tour, I saw these lower astral beings being worked through the very people I love and my friends. I saw them working through people. People actually have pictures of people glitching and dark eyes. And this is not just a trick of the camera. These are things coming through other people who are well-intentioned and have bright lights. So we got to be very careful when you are doing your work that you're protecting your energy. I use Alexander Quinn's version of the 12D shielding method. He has a meditation on his channel. It's very easy to follow. I like Alexander and I like his meditation for that. Just like any one of the mediums I've ever worked with told me, if something isn't vibing verbally for you, just change the wording or just make it your own because it's going to be in your frequency. So a lot of the things that are projected out there, that, meditation wise, I'll just reword it in my mind to make it vibrate more in harmony with me. But this is very important to take into note that, yeah, when you're like, do you think I'm doing spiritual work if I'm having a glass of wine? I don't, I used to be an, I used to do a whole plethora of not the greatest of things. I'm not proud of that. I needed the experience. I needed to be in those states of thinking. I needed to be in those states of depression. It was a humongous test for me to overcome. And I've overcome a whole fuckload of a great deal. I don't choose to do a lot of anything anymore. If I have a glass of wine or have a beer, it's not to get drunk. It's just to like have a beer or to have a glass of wine. If it's not a bad thing, you have to have everything in balance. Like you're supposed to have fun and experience life, right? And I'm not sustaining a monk status, so I want to have fun and enjoy life. We all have vices, and I have compassion for mine. Tobacco. I love my coffee. Love my coffee. But I used to drink more. Let's just say I used to drink a lot more coffee than I do today. If I drink 2 cups a day, that's it. That's where my line is drawn. Um, I mean, everything has to be done in balance. And I don't believe astral entities are going to flow through and more people are going to be more aware of them because we're overlapping and we're in their territory now, vibrationally. So just be wary about the things that you see in the sky. If that's lower fourth overlapping, that isn't the best of beings to be dealing with. They exist in alien form too. Just putting that out there. A lot of it is higher density stuff, and most of us are seeing the higher density. But what could the illusion be? What is out there is just a holographic simulated reflection of our thoughts. Sure, most likely is. But that's for another day. I hope and I want to thank everybody for watching my TikTok clips this afternoon. I was up late last night making that video. I have to make another TikTok opening video. Hi. Because that's not really fitting that gig anymore. But I want to thank everybody for joining me on that little segment today. I'm probably gonna, I don't know, I'm getting pulled to do something. I don't know what, but just keep the belly ding ding ling 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 on the icon on when you subscribe so you know when I'm posting. I usually post everything on my social medias. So thank you all for checking this out. This was like, again, another like reading from the Curtis books. And I can't wait to tackle the rest of this book because holy shit, it's in alignment of what's going on right now. So sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within, be the shoulder physically, be the biggest, brightest lighthouses, seed your truths, and I hope to see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.